Have you ever wondered what it's really like to live in the United States? Not just what you see in movies, but the real country behind the skyscrapers, the highways, the culture, and the people. From a land that stretches between two massive oceans, to a society built by people from every corner of the world. From one of the strongest economies on the planet, to the everyday lives of millions of ordinary families. Today, we're taking a journey through the United States of America. We'll explore where this powerful nation is located, how its society works, the religions and cultures that shape daily life, the massive economy that influences the world, and what living in America truly feels like in 2026. So sit back, relax, and let's discover the real story of the United States. Okay guys, now let's talk about the geography of America. When people talk about the US, they often focus on the politics or the movies, but the real secret to its story is actually the ground it's built on. Geographically, the US is sitting in one of the most powerful power spots on Earth. Think about it. The country anchors the center of North America, stretching all the way from the Atlantic in the east to the Pacific in the west. In 2026, that two-ocean advantage is more relevant than ever. It means the US is naturally plugged into Europe on one side and Asia on the other. Very few countries have that kind of built-in global access without having to cross someone else's borders. Now look at the neighbors. To the north, you've got the world's longest undefended border with Canada. To the south, a massive connection with Mexico that opens up the rest of the Americas. And down at the bottom, the Gulf of Mexico, which is basically a giant engine for the country, powering everything from global shipping to energy production. But it's not just one big, solid block. You've also got Alaska way up near the Arctic, where, interestingly, melting ice is actually opening up new northern shipping routes in 2026, and Hawaii, a volcanic paradise in the middle of the Pacific. This means the US isn't just a country, it's a collection of almost every climate you can imagine. We're talking icy tundras, tropical rainforests, and sun-scorched deserts, all under one flag. Inside those borders, the land is just as diverse. You've got the Mississippi River system, the veins of the country that allowed goods to move through the heartland long before we had highways. In the west, you have the young, jagged Rocky Mountains shaping the weather, while in the east, the older, rolling Appalachians hold the history of the first settlements. And right in the middle, the Great Plains. These are the world's breadbasket. Even today, those vast stretches of flat, fertile land are producing the food that feeds a huge chunk of the planet. So, when you see the US on a map, don't just see a shape. See a geographical masterpiece that's perfectly positioned for trade, agriculture, and influence. In 2026, the land isn't just where Americans live, it's the foundation of how the country works. Now let's look at the social situation in America. If you want to understand the soul of America in 2026, you have to look at the people. It's the ultimate global neighborhood. We've moved past the old melting pot idea. Today, it's more like a high-speed, digital mosaic. The numbers tell a story of a country that is more diverse than ever. White Americans make up about 57% of the population, followed by a fast-growing Hispanic community at 20%, Black Americans at 13%, and Asian Americans at 7%. But the real magic isn't in the stats. It's in the fact that this diversity is moving out of the big cities and into small-town suburbs, changing the food, music, and vibe of the entire country. Socially, we're living in two worlds at once, the physical and the digital. Remote work and online communities aren't just trends anymore, they are how we survive. But that digital life comes with a loud, open culture. Americans in 2026 don't hold back. Whether it's about the cost of living, healthcare, or equality, people are using their voices, online and in the streets, to demand change. It's messy and it's loud, but it shows just how much people still value the right to be heard. We're also seeing a huge shift in what we value. The hustle culture of the past is being replaced by a serious focus on mental health and work-life balance. Family life looks different too. More people living solo or in blended households, but that community spirit is still the backbone. When things get tough, whether it's a natural disaster or an economic dip, neighbors still show up for each other. In short, American society in 2026 is energetic, outspoken, and constantly reinventing itself. It's a work in progress, but it's definitely not standing still. Now let's look at religion and culture. If you really want to see how the US works, you have to look at the mosaic. By 2026, the cultural and spiritual landscape has become incredibly layered. Let's talk about faith first. Freedom of belief is basically in the country's DNA. Christianity is still the largest group, about 62% of adults, but it's changing. You'll see traditional cathedrals, but you'll also see a huge rise in non-denominational worship centers that feel more like community hubs. At the same time, we've seen a massive jump in the knowns, people who don't claim a specific religion. Nearly 30% of Americans now fall into this category. They aren't necessarily non-spiritual, though. In 2026, it's all about personal wellness. Meditation, nature, and community are the new sanctuaries for the younger generations. And of course, the US is a global headquarters for world religions. Whether it's a synagogue in New York, a Hindu temple in Houston, or a mosque in Chicago, these aren't just buildings, they're the heart of their neighborhoods. Culturally, it's a giant, beautiful mess. We've moved way beyond fusion. In 2026, the trend is heritage re-anchoring. People are reaching back to their roots, Native American, African, Latino, Asian, and European, and mixing them with high-tech lives. The food, it's the year of the pepper. We're obsessed with spicy, sweet and spicy flavors and ancestral grains. The sound, go to any festival and you'll hear a mix of country, hip-hop, and global fusion. The holidays, we still have the big unifiers like Thanksgiving and the 4th of July, but now, Diwali, Lunar New Year, and Eid are becoming mainstream community events in cities across the map. What ties it all together in 2026 is coexistence. Sure, people argue, but they also share recipes, celebrate each other's festivals, and build something entirely new every single day. It's a living, breathing experiment that proves you don't have to be the same to belong together. Now let's look at the economic situation in America. Now, if you want to understand why the US remains the world's most influential player, you have to look at the engine. By early 2026, the American economy is sitting at a GDP of over $28 trillion. To put that in perspective, that's larger than the economies of dozens of other countries combined. But it's not just about the size, it's about the diversity. The US doesn't put all its eggs in one basket. It's a mix of old world power and new world tech. You've got agriculture, where the Midwest is essentially the world's breadbasket, running alongside Hollywood and Wall Street. The biggest story of 2026, though, is the AI supercycle. We've moved past the hype, and now AI is actually driving the economy, powering everything from logistics to medicine. In fact, tech investment alone is estimated to be responsible for about 1% of the entire country's growth this year. It's a massive CapEx boom, where companies are spending billions on data centers and chips, creating a whole new layer of jobs. And then there's the US dollar. Even with all the talk of global shifts, it's still the world's main reserve currency. About 57% of global reserves are still held in dollars. This gives the US an exorbitant privilege. It means when the American economy moves, the rest of the world has to pay attention. Of course, it's not all smooth sailing. In 2026, we're seeing a two-speed economy. While the tech and stock-owning sectors are thriving, many households are still feeling a stagflation-like vibe, with inflation sticking around 2.8% and housing costs reaching record highs. It takes an annual income of about $110,000 just to afford a typical home now. So, the American economy in 2026 is a paradox. It's incredibly resilient and leading the world in innovation, but it's also dealing with a widening gap between those riding the AI wave and those just trying to cover the rent. It's a massive, complex machine that is constantly reinventing itself, proving that in the world of global finance, America is still the one to beat. Now let's see how the living conditions are in America. If you move to the US in 2026, Your daily life is going to look completely different depending on your zip code. On one hand, the standard of living is still world-class. We're talking about a country where high-speed internet, clean water, and advanced tech are just the baseline for most people. But here's the reality check. We're currently in what experts are calling the Great Housing Reset. After years of skyrocketing prices, the market has finally stalled at 0% growth this year. That sounds like good news, right? Well, sort of. Mortgage rates are still hovering around 6.3%, and you now need to earn about 43% more than the average worker just to afford a typical home. Because of this, we're seeing a massive suburban shift. People are ditching the expensive coastal, superstar cities for more affordable hubs like Syracuse, Cleveland, or St. Louis. Daily life is also more digital than ever. Remote work isn't a trend anymore. It's a permanent fixture. This has actually helped people find a better work-life balance, but it's also created a new kind of social isolation. Healthcare is another big piece of the 2026 puzzle. We just hit a record-high life expectancy of 79 years, thanks to a massive rollout of AI-driven medicine and telehealth, which is now used by 75% of hospitals. But even with that tech, nearly half of American adults say they still struggle to afford their medical bills. And we have to talk about the gap. While the top 10% of households are driving half of all consumer spending, about 7 in 10 Americans say they're still struggling to pay for basics like food and utilities. Inflation has cooled to about 2.4%, but prices haven't actually dropped. They've just stopped rising so fast. So, life in the US today is a mix of high-tech convenience and high-pressure budgeting. It's a place of incredible opportunity and comfort, but you have to be very smart about where you choose to plant your roots. And that's what truly makes the United States unique. A country that is constantly changing, growing, and redefining itself. If you enjoyed this journey and want to explore more countries, cultures, and real-life stories around the world, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with others. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.